Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
So, Melanie, we are deep into the first week of Lent.
We're not deep into it. This is the first Sunday of Lent.
We're deep in the beginning. We're deep in the first week.
Deep usually suggests more than one day in.
Well, Wednesday was the first day of Lent.
Yes, but
we're now the third or fourth day of Lent.
Yes, but it's the first it's the Sunday of the first week of Lent. See, I was talking about this with the kids. They're like, so what's Thursday and Friday and Saturday? I'm like, they're the first week of Lent. I'm like, no, technically they're not.
Well, so Thursday is Meat Thursday, as I call it. It's the sandwich of Lent, the bacon sandwich of Lent, because it's the day between Ash Wednesday and the first Friday of Lent that you can eat bacon.
But technically it's Thursday after Ash Wednesday, Friday after Ash Wednesday, Saturday after Ash Wednesday, and then Sunday is Sunday of the first week of Lent. So today is the first day of the first week of Lent.
Well, I wasn't really speaking more liturgical calendar and just more calendar.
Yeah, I know, but I think it's a funny quirk of the calendar that you have.
It's this limbo.
You have Lent before the first week of Lent.
I was going to say it's this limbo week, but limbo is a whole nother thing we don't want to get into.
No.
So, yes, it is the first Sunday of Lent, and we are no longer allowed to use the A word until Easter, right, Melanie?
I totally say it all the time because I am so bad at remembering.
Was it twice now since Ash Wednesday during night prayer? You have said the A word, that we're not the Alleluia word in the prayer, that we're not supposed to pray during Lent. so now I'm trying to get the kids to give you pinches every time you do it as some negative reinforcement. Aren't I helpful?
So very
helpful.
So very helpful. Thank you so much.
All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about our week. Of course, we mentioned starting Lent, but this was also Sophie's birthday week. Sophie's birthday happens to fall this year on the first Friday of Lent. So
lucky Sophie.
Lucky Sophie. So our traditions, if you're a new listener, is that the kids open their presents on their birthday morning. Then we will usually go out to dinner, the child's choice of where we get something to eat, and then we'll have cake when we get back. But we decided with Sophie's concurrence that it would be easier for her, and easier to pick if we decided to go out to dinner not on Friday.
A more pleasant dining experience, you mean?
Well, not more pleasant. I mean, there's plenty of great fish places around, but you'd be limited in what you could eat.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's
she'd have more choices of what to have and where to go and that sort of stuff.
There are people in our family who would be very...
Yes, there are members of our family who would, if they were limited to just seafood, would be bad. Seafood, going out for seafood. So what we did was she got her presents on that morning. We don't usually do desserts in Lent, except for birthdays, and we always have at least one birthday in Lent.
Sometimes two.
And so we had cake. We'll talk about the cake a little bit later. And then we went out on Saturday. We went to dinner. She chose the really fantastic family-run Mexican restaurant that's not far from us, like sort of down the street, called Sombrero in Weymouth, if you're in the area. It is awesome, family-run. They have the best service.
They really do. Our last time going out to eat, we talked about it. I think it was Chili's, and we were vowed never again because the service was so slow, so bad.
Yep.
And this was the opposite of that. When we were walking out the door after finishing our meal, I was like, that was so fast. I can't believe we're leaving already. I almost feel like we just got here.
But it's not like we were rushed.
No. They weren't rushing us at all, but it was efficient. It was effective.
Yeah, well, one of the things, as soon as we sat down, there was already chips and salsa on the table. And then as like we ordered like drinks, and
like they didn't take them forever to come around and get our drink order either. It was like we sat down, and as soon as our butts were touching the chairs, they were asking us what we wanted to drink.
And then they, as soon as my iced tea got low, another round of drinks came out. It was just like really efficient.
We didn't have to ask for it; they just appeared.
And just the food is so good. And I was really proud of both Bella and Anthony, who both of them tend to go for the same things that they're familiar with. They both tried something outside their comfort zone. They tried something new. Anthony ordered arroz con pollo, and Bella got a fajita quesadilla. And so she read the description. It was very interesting to her, and she's like, "Ooh, this looks really good." And she was telling me, I hesitate because what if I don't like it? And I said, well, that's the risk, right? But with great risks can come great rewards. And so, give it a try. If you don't like it, we can figure something out. But you looks like you like it, so let's try it. So I hopefully that encouragement will get them to be more adventurous. I like when the kids are adventurous and they try things and that sort of stuff. Sophie's adventurous. She's adventurous within a circumscribed circle.
Right.
There are certain things she just doesn't like to eat. But yeah, that was really a really good meal. So I was really pleased with that. So that was Saturday night. But we did that. My mom had come over and hung out with us all day. And then after I brought her home, then we went out to dinner with Sophie. And then, so let's talk about what Sophie got for her birthday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So her favorite present, I think, was the Star Wars Black Series figure of Crosshair from the Bad Batch. She really, really likes, she and Bella have a collection of the Black Series figures, which the Black Series figures are the slightly nicer, bigger ones. Anyway, and Crosshair is her favorite character from the Bad Batch. And what else did she get? She got a couple Star Wars t-shirts, one of Boba Fett and one of Bad Batch.
Yeah.
Like
which
the
my mom
show logo.
My mom at first thought said something foul.
Oh dear. What are you letting Sophie wear? Did she say?
No, but she's like, what? Oh, I thought it said something else for a second. No, Mom. We wouldn't let her wear that shirt. So what else did she get?
She had a bunch of books.
Pirate books.
Two pirate books, which my friend Simca Fisher had recommended. Like she said, they were kind of fun, goofy novels, which sounded like Sophie would enjoy it. I mean, obviously pirates are a big thing around here, so that sounded like a perfect win.
Mm-hmm.
And some Saint books, because Sophie really likes reading Saint books. My mom gave her like this Mandalorian fan stuff.
It was like a memorabilia pack.
Yeah, so it had a knit cap in the shape of Mando's helmet, and it had a little bag, like a messenger bag, like the one that Grogu is in the show, which of course Lucy stuffed Grogu immediately was placed into the bag. It had a little Grogu keychain and a teacup.
That was like the thing that carried his little bassinet, this floating bassinet.
Yeah. So it
had a bunch of little things.
Yeah, little bits and tchotchkes things. It was fun. She loved it. She also got a really nice skirt.
Mm-hmm.
She does like skirts.
There are girly things that she likes.
Yes. Yeah. She immediately put on the swishy black skirt with the Boba Fett t-shirt and the Mandalorian knit cap, and she looked really cute.
So the big present is a new iPad, which she needs because she's got an old hand-me-down from me that she's been using. She uses for schoolwork. She uses to do her art on and various other things. It's her only computer, and something's wrong with the plug. The lightning port. It's broken. So we ended up getting a new one from Apple, the low end one, but it's delayed. The shipping date is like beginning of end of March, beginning of April, and then I realized that the Apple has a big event on Tuesday, which I knew, but put two and two together. Like, I bet they're updating it, and so she'll be getting whatever the brand new one is. I'm sure. So that was the big present for her, which is good because she uses it for all her work. Like it's her computer. So that was the big gift. So yeah, so her birthday. Yeah. Anything? Did she get anything else? That was it.
I think that was it.
Yeah. And it's funny if you see the pictures of Sophie. I put them on my social media. She's like every picture. She's got this huge smile and her mouth is wide open and she's like this. Wow. She's like so expressive.
She has always been incredibly expressive, and she also knows how to pose for the camera.
Yes, she's always been a big ham since she was.
We have a picture of her
toddler
before her. I think it was before her first birthday, and she was sitting on the couch or just standing on the couch, methodically throwing blocks over the arm of the couch, one at a time, and so it was really cute the way she was doing it. And so we grabbed a camera to take a picture of her doing it. She noticed the camera and she stopped and held the block in midair, like about ready to drop it, but didn't drop it yet while we got the camera in place and focused.
Posed without looking at the camera, just frozen in motion.
Just posed, wait till the camera was there. Then after she heard the shutter click, she dropped the block.
So
she's very
camera aware.
Very camera aware.
Big ham. So yeah, so that was so Sophie's birthday. And then of course, starting Lent, we're getting into Lent and all of the things that entails. I, as usual, am not super prepared for Lent, frankly. I don't know. What am I giving up, and what additional things am I taking on? And I'm always so disorganized with that. I just kind of stumble into Lent and hope it goes well. Pretty much, that's me in Lent. I don't know. It's never. For me, it's never this organized, thought out, planned. These are my disciplines. This is how I'm going to be doing something different and all that other stuff. So, yeah, that's me. Love it or leave it. So, we'll talk a little bit more about Lent as we get into we're going to talk about the readings from Mass today later on. But the other big thing I was doing just yesterday was planning our summer vacation. So we didn't really take a summer vacation last year.
We did not.
Which we ended up taking a fall vacation, sort of involuntarily, as you well know if you've been listening any length of time. And so I wanted to make sure we get another vacation, and we figure probably a camping vacation. That's our usual thing. We go tent camping, and we've usually gone, unless it's been like that big trip we took to Kentucky and back. But usually it's camping in Maine somewhere. But this time we're thinking maybe Cape Cod. So
that would be nice.
It would be nice because that experience, that extended time we got on Cape Cod last fall, getting to go around the different places of the Cape Cod National Seashore really showed how beautiful it is and what an amazing.
And we wanted to spend more time, frankly.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about just that was the fall. Like the summer is going to be a whole different story. The crowds and all that sort of stuff. So
I think maybe I wonder if the end of August or the first week of September might be less crowded, but still things open.
Yeah, but so like after summer camp, but
right,
because the kids have to, four of them are going to scout camp. That's at the beginning of August. So yeah, maybe after Labor Day, like the first week after Labor Day, maybe things could still be nice, but it's gonna be after everyone's back at school and that sort of thing. That's possible. Of course, it's a long way. If we do that, I want to have some shorter opportunities to get away before that then, because that would be like a whole week. But maybe like we could take a couple midweek days or like a long weekend earlier in the summer then and go some other places. Like that Sandy Pond campground, I took the two little ones last summer while the other ones were at summer camp.
Right.
Very close, less than an hour away, and really cool. Just fun to be in the woods and on a pond and no pressure. It was nice. So yeah, we should look into that again. So yeah, looking at several places on the Cape, and then I also looked at a couple of places up in Maine on the coast. And there's this one place that looks really cool. I think it's called Hermit Island, and like the campground is literally like the campsites are literally on the edge, like on the edge of the beach, on like they're in the woods. And then there's the beach and I think it's like a stony beach, and then the water. So it's like you would be sleeping right next to the ocean.
That sounds really cool.
It would be really awesome. So I might look into that. That actually is the most expensive of all of them.
That's not surprising. I
Yeah.
mean, it's near the water. It's near the ocean. It's going to be expensive.
But it's the only one that doesn't charge you extra for having more than 4 people in your family. All of the places charge for tent or for camping in general. It's 2 adults, 2 kids, and every kid after that is another $5 or $10 a night. So it's still not super expensive. I mean, for 5 nights, most places it was all of them were between like $250 and $335 or something like that for 5 nights altogether, which is cheap considering like what hotels are. So for vacations, it's really reasonable. So if you got the camping gear, which we do now, I think it's the way to do it. So we'll see. We need to sit down and talk about and make a choice. I think, but I think that doing the Sandy Pond, I think that's actually as in Sandy Pond and then something else. That would be good. All right, let's move on to talk about things that we've been eating in that realm, but not exactly stuff I've been eating. We a couple weeks ago we talked about how you discovered the Vietnamese market in Randolph.
Right.
You went there with Lucy. Well, I have been hearing from one of the scout dads, like in fact the Cub Scout pack leader, Dan, had been telling me about this place in Brockton, which is the city next to us, called Brockton Meat Market, where he goes to get all the meats, especially the meats they use for like for the scout camping. And I've been meaning to get there, and I finally got there last week, and it was awesome. Like, the meat at the supermarkets is just the price has gone way up. They're never on sale anymore. If they're on sale, they're not much of a sale. And even if they even have them, which a lot of times the stuff has been out. But I went and yeah, they've got everything. They've got whole briskets. They've got picanha cut steaks, which is you never see in the special cuts of beef. So I got like wings. We had soy sauce wings for dinner tonight. A pound of wings at the supermarket was $5. Here it was $3. So
wow,
yeah, it was awesome. They had pork chops. I got some pork chops. But the other great thing about it too is that it's also a Latin American market. So they have all kinds of Latin American ingredients. So for any of the cooking of that kind, all the beans and the masa and the special sausage like the chorizo and all that sort of stuff. And plus, since it's a full service butcher, you can get exactly what you want. Hey, can you cut me some boneless pork shoulder? I see you get the bone in pork shoulder. Can I get some boneless? Sure, here. Bum, 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 bum. How much do you need exactly? And here you go. It was awesome. So definitely, I mean, it's a little extra work, a little extra time to go there in addition to going to the supermarket, but I think it's well worth it, especially now with prices going up and everything. It'll be much better to do that. So, and once the summer grilling comes around, it's going to be awesome. So there's that. But the thing that the new dish that I cooked this week is Japanese fried chicken. Did you know that's a thing?
It was really good.
Yeah. So in Japan, obviously after World War II, there were the American occupying forces were there for a while, and there was a huge influence of American culture on Japanese culture, music, clothes, all that sort of stuff, but food especially. And so fried chicken became a thing. And so this is a Japanese spin on fried chicken. Yeah, and as you said, it was really good. So what makes it different is, of course, it has soy sauce. So you take soy sauce, sake, ginger, garlic, sugar, and salt in a bowl. Then you add chicken, and what you do is you take chicken thighs and you cut them in strips that are about like 1 to 1.5 inches wide, crosswise. And although, as you were saying, I should have cut them in half. They were a little long. So,
well, it would have been fine if we weren't doing it as rice bowls.
Right. Well, yeah, we did them as rice bowls. So you marinate the chicken in this marinade, and then you take it out, you pat it dry, and you coat it in cornstarch, and then you let it sit and you let it absorb. So what you want to make sure is that there's no wet spots in the cornstarch. So you want to make sure it's all moist all around, and then you deep fry it in a Dutch oven, with oil, and that's it. Very simple. And then we did it with rice bowls. So we put it on, we had the seasoned rice with soy sauce and
Sesame oil.
And then all the various fixins like vegetables and stuff like that. It's the sneaky way we get the kids to eat vegetables.
Yeah, they're much more likely to put vegetables into a bowl of rice with meat than they are to just eat plain vegetables.
Yeah, like a side of veggies on their plate. So it was good. Yeah, and it was easy. It was fast. Used chicken thighs, which are fairly easy to get a hold of. I would totally do this again. Yeah, it was a good recipe. So, and then for Sophie's birthday, she requested a lemon cake.
She did.
So you said, and I agree, this is the best lemon cake you've made.
It was really good. So this lemon cake, I wanted one that had either sour cream or yogurt. I ended up using a recipe that called for Greek yogurt. I think the recipe was written for no fat yogurt because it had a lot of fat in it, but I had full fat whole milk yogurt and I just went ahead and used it anyway, and it came out fine. In fact, it was
very moist.
Very moist. So it started off with a stick of butter, and you creamed the butter and the sugar, and then you added half a cup of vegetable oil, and then you added a cup of Greek yogurt and 3 eggs. So there's a lot of liquid ingredients in it, and I'm thinking, wow, that looks really wet. But then once I put it in the flour, and it was fine. I add a little bit of almond flour just because I kind of like the nuttiness and extra protein as opposed to extra carbs. Kind of makes it a little bit less of a sugar hit. I don't know. I always feel a little bit less sick to my stomach when I eat a cake made with almond flour, at least partial.
Interesting.
And then I made homemade lemon curd for the to make a filling between the 2 layers of the cake, and a lemon cream cheese frosting. And it was like super lemony because I think it had lemon juice, lemon zest, and lemon extract in the cake, then the lemon curd, and then the lemon frosting.
Interesting.
It was like super lemon hit. It was awesome. I put extra lemon extract in the cake, like even more than the recipe called for. So yeah, that was really yummy and lemony.
Cool. Yes, it was very good. And
I think one person said it might have had too much lemon in it, but I don't know that there is such a thing.
Well, that's the thing. Most of us love lemon. The more lemon, the better. So other people's mileage may vary, but yeah, it was really good. So lemon cake, very good. So,
and honestly, I'm really bad about saving recipes. So most of the time when I make a cake, I just start by Googling. But it means that we don't get tired of the same recipe over and over again.
That's true. Because it means we don't get to have a cake that we love again, I guess. But, it's something new. So next birthday will be Isabella's birthday in May. So we've got a ways to go. It'll be post-Easter for that.
Yeah.
That's the last of the feasting for before Easter. All right.
Well, no, because we still have St. Patrick and St. Joseph's days.
Oh, right. Yes, we'll be doing some of it. And of course, Bella's confirmation is coming up in April.
But that's after Easter, right? April?
That is yes, actually, it is the Saturday after Easter. So it's in the Easter octave.
That'll be cool.
That's going to be fun. Your sister's coming up.
Yeah, I just ordered Bella's confirmation dress today. My parents offered to buy her a nice dress for confirmation. So I got her a really pretty red satin dress from Shakti. It's got like beautiful black embroidery or something. It's a black on red pattern.
Yeah, you get all your dresses from Shakti now. Yeah,
mostly.
Yeah. So and your sister's coming up because she's going to be Bella's sponsor, which is nice. It'll be really nice for her. She's coming for 2 weeks, so it'll be good. Awesome. So let's talk about what we've been watching and reading. So this week in our watch of the MCU with the kids, we watched Thor Ragnarok.
So good.
Which many people say is the best MCU movie. It might be. At the time, it was the best. I'd have to I have to think about that again. Think about it more clearly. But it's certainly pretty awesome. It's a lot of fun.
It's a very fun movie. As I quipped, It's the most fun destruction of the world movie I've ever seen.
Yes, the most fun apocalypse you'll ever experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the pacing of it is really interesting because there is a lot of death and destruction in this movie, and yet the beats are such that there's
always humor.
There's always a note of humor immediately afterwards to kind of pull you up out of the funk and keep you kind of riding on a action adventure high.
Yeah. I mean, this is the movie that really gave Thor the opportunity to be funny. It really plays to Chris Hemsworth's strengths because he's really a funny actor. Thor, especially in the first Thor movie, was played much more seriously. He had a few funny lines, but he was much more serious. But here, he really gets to let loose.
I also feel like in the first movie, you get more of the Thor as ordinary guy. I mean, yes, he's the god of thunder, but he's without his
powers.
His powers for most of the movie.
Yeah.
And in this one, and I feel like in Dark World, he doesn't really get a chance to shine as like the god of thunder. Whereas I feel like in Ragnarok, he's really got the much more of the feeling of the Thor from like the Norse mythology that like I enjoy, where Thor goes on random crazy adventures and beats things up. And
well, this is like the beginning of this movie is just like such a great beginning.
I love the opening scene
where
he's just the best.
He's kind of breaking the fourth wall. You think he's talking to the audience. You might be wondering how I ended up here in this cage, and then it turns out he's talking to a skeleton that's in the cage with him, whose jaw literally drops in the process.
So good.
and he's hanging there by the chain and he's spinning around and the bad guy is monologuing and he's like, hold on, wait a second, I'm coming back around. And he's swinging backwards to him. Oh my gosh, it was so funny. And then it was such a good movie. And then Thor: Love and Thunder is coming out later this year, so that should be good.
That'll be really good too.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
So yeah, and then of course with Loki in this one was very good, and just like the
I love the relationship between Thor and Loki in Ragnarok
when they're not at odds. I mean, they kind of bicker a little bit like brothers, but they're not like enemies.
Right. There's much more of a sibling rivalry, but with kind of the in jokes and the things. I mean, my favorite moment is when they're in the elevator and they're discussing strategy, and Thor says, "Let's get help." And Loki's like, no, we can't do it. Get help. That's horrible.
I hate get help.
I hate get help. and Thor's like, no, we're going to get help. And then the elevator doors open and there's Thor and Loki
supporting a Loki who looks like he's injured and yells to the bad guys, get help. And then as they turn, he picks up Loki and throws him at the bad guys.
And you kind of imagine like,
how did they come up with
how did they come up with this as kids?
And they've done it enough that it has a name called Get Help.
Right. Which, I mean, the very fact that they have sort of this technique of this thing that they do that has a name that they both know it really creates this feeling of sibling something or other. Sibling relationship. Yeah. Which makes what happens next at the beginning of Infinity War all the more poignant. Right.
Yeah. So at the end of this one, as the kids were talking about the movie, they were discussing whether Thor will die in the future or something like that, and someone says he's an Avenger, he can't die, and I'm like, oh, my summer children. Oh, I'm so sorry. Not only can one Avenger die,
some children listen to this podcast.
Yes, occasionally. Yeah, well, yeah, they'll tell them not to. They'll teach them to listen to the podcast and figure out what we're talking about them. Yes. Anyway, let's move on then. I finished a Netflix series called Another Life, and this is a sci-fi drama starring Katie Sackhoff, who you may know from such shows as Battlestar Galactica and The Mandalorian, where she was Bo-Katan, and she was also in Longmire. And it took me a long time to finish this. I watched the first season, then I started watching the second season, and I stalled. I just got stalled. partly because, like, especially the first season, very much felt like 90210 in space, or Party of Five in space, or name your bunch of young adults in their silly relationship nonsense in space sort of thing. Like, I like Katie Sackhoff. She's really good. And some of the other actors, I've liked them in other things. There was the guy who's from, she was Clara's boyfriend in Doctor Who.
Oh, Pink, Danny Pink.
Danny Pink, yeah.
I love Danny Pink.
Yeah, and I like the actor. He's really good, and he was good in this too. But yeah, there was a lot of like woke stuff. A lot of it just was kind of not very good writing. As we get into the second season, it was frankly, they killed off a lot of those characters, which I was fine with, and they kind of pared it down, got kind of focused a little bit. But even then, by the end of it, I was kind of like, yeah, like it was actually starting to get good and focused, and then they ended it. Like, it just like the last episode was like, and now we're just gonna wrap things up and we're good. It's like, wait, what? And apparently that's the end. They're not gonna have a third season. They've decided to cancel it, and they decided to create a wrap up at the end of this episode rather than continue it. So it felt like they went back, and in the last 10 minutes of this final episode of the second season, they tacked on this ending that gives it a cap. So yeah, it was, it was all right, but it could have been better. And I think the fact that they didn't give it a third season reflects that. Yeah. It's not like with Lost in Space, which ended after its fourth or fifth season. I forget how many seasons that was. But that felt like that they had completed the story. They didn't need any more story. This one was like, you could have done more, but we're not gonna, because we've run out of steam and this has kind of gotten blah. So that was called Another Life. So you want to talk about some stuff you've been reading or are going to read?
Okay. So first of all, I wanted to say that I started reading Around the World in 80 Days with the Kids, which has been surprisingly fun. I sort of vaguely had the idea that I'd read it as a kid, and now that I'm actually reading it, I realize I never read it as a kid. I have no idea what it was that I actually read that I thought was it. It's a really fun story, and so I'm really happy, grateful to Darwin Catholic for suggesting that.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a good read aloud. I mean, it is very much a product of its day. It is a 19th century novel, and he goes around the world, and there are very 19th century attitudes towards people in India and in Japan and Native Americans. And so you're going to have to like see it as a product of its time, but it's a fun story.
Mm.
Then for Lent, I've decided to start reading Graham Greene's The Power and the Glory, which is one of those novels that everyone always talks about. I've heard about, and I have a fairly good idea of what it's about, but I've never actually read it. I try to read a work of fiction during Lent. In the past, I've sometimes been successful and sometimes have not been successful in reading nonfiction, like spiritual works, but I can get through a novel, and I generally find that it's good for me to kind of pick up a classic that I've never read and challenge myself that way, because I tend to gravitate towards lighter reading and not make myself read serious fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And something with themes that are going to make me think more about the spiritual life is something I usually go for.
Right.
So Power and the Glory takes place in Mexico, and it follows a priest
Yeah.
who is an alcoholic and struggles with faith and redemption, etc. That's what I know about it.
But like you said, it's one of those novels that people rave about, and it's one of it. And despite the premise, that brief premise, it actually is apparently faith affirming.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the fact is that our faith is a faith of broken people, and Jesus came to save broken people. And so a story about somebody who's broken is, well, kind of what I need because I'm a broken person too. I mean,
join the club.
Yes.
Okay.
Have not been really watching anything.
After that big binge of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I kind of need to take a break from watching shows and I think focus more on reading. I've mostly been reading, honestly, a bunch of how-to books on writing poetry, like not how-to, books about poetic craft and technique, which probably not going to be terribly. It's kind of niche, not terribly interesting to the readers, listeners, and I'm bouncing back and forth between a bunch of them.
Okay. Well, we need to get back to is Raising Dion, which we watched the first episode of the second season.
It's true. We need to watch more of that.
And the second season of The Chosen, which you've only watched one episode of with the girls.
Right.
I was just crazy busy this past week. So like every night I had either I was out doing something or a meeting, or I had to watch something for like Secrets of Star Trek or Secrets of Doctor Who or whatever. So it's been kind of crazy. Which, by the way, the first episode of Star Trek Picard was the second season was really good, and it only highlights like the contrast with Star Trek Discovery. It highlights the fact that Discovery doesn't have to be as bad as it is. Like Discovery could be a really good show if it got out of this whole like, oh, the emotions togetherness, and we're all feeling lots of feelings and. Like Picard even deals with trauma and stuff like that and emotion, but it's got action and it doesn't wallow, whereas Discovery wallows. And so it's just kind of that contrast. This most recent episode, they discover the alien species that need to contact with communicate through, wait for it, emotions. That's right. So that's you can learn a lot more about that on Secrets of Star Trek that I do with Father Corey and Jimmy Aiken. So check that out. All right, let's talk about this week's Mass readings in general and the first Sunday of Lent. So as you'll recall, the first reading was from Deuteronomy, and it's Moses, and he sets the basket before the altar of the Lord, and he basically describes how God saved the people from slavery in Egypt.
There's something in it.
There was something in that you wanted to comment on. My father was a wandering Aramean who went down to Egypt with a small household and lived there as an alien, but there he became a nation, great, strong, and numerous.
I really like that. There's something about that really grabs me, and I can't really put my finger on it. But you bring the basket to the Lord, and then this is like the script. This is the declaration you make when you bring your offering to the Lord. My father was a wandering Aramean. It's kind of interesting. It's like telling God about the history of his relationship with you.
Well, this is very much like the Eucharistic prayer. This is different from, like, the wording is different, but right. It's what we do in the Eucharistic prayer. We bring our gifts before God. We bring our gifts to the altar, our basket of bread and wine, and then we tell God about salvation history. Like,
right.
It's not that he forgot. But what we're doing is reminding ourselves by telling God, you gave us your son, and he's died for us.
Right.
For
so
our
this
sins.
Is sort of a proto-Eucharistic liturgy.
Yes.
That Moses is setting out for them.
Therefore, I have now brought you the first fruits of the products of the soil, which you, O Lord, have given me. Just like we bring the bread and wine, and Jesus, who is that first fruits that the Lord has given us, that we return to him, and
right.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yes.
It's an interesting reading for the beginning of Lent.
Right. Well, because it really goes with the gospel, which is Jesus, the temptation in the desert, because one does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. And so we talk about Mother Sophia at the Mount St. Mary's Abbey, the Benedictine Abbey, the Trappistine Abbey. And she had a reflection on this week, and she kind of goes back to this thing that she did when they discern their vocation. One of the questions they're asked is, where in the monastery do you feel most yourself? In the scriptorium, in the chapel, in the work, the labora. Where do you feel most yourself? And she notes that for each of us, including even for those of us not in monasteries, there are certain places where we find life, this is quoting her, where we find life more readily, where we enjoy the sense that we are exactly where we are meant to be, fully alive under God's gaze, reflecting his glory in our human being. And Lent is such a place. The Lenten desert, like the monastery, is a place of intensive care. With Christ in the desert, we open ourselves to become bearers of the cares of others, of the whole world, to become ourselves a place of nourishment where people can grow into the light of God's gaze, a place of intensive care. So, like that idea that we enter into the desert, like Jesus goes into the desert, like the people with Moses went into the desert. And in that deprivation, we become a source of nourishment for others. By entering into that self-deprivation, we make ourselves more resource for others. More, I mean, a resource sounds very modern, 21st century.
Right.
But we become that nourishment for others, like Jesus became nourishment for others. And in that same way, like we have that in the, we bring the basket before the Lord in that on the altar. And we remind God of how we were oppressed and how he delivered us. So we went down into Egypt and we were deprived and we were stripped of everything. And then we were brought out of Egypt into the land flowing with milk and honey, and now we bring those goods back, to the altar. Out of that deprivation comes abundance and nourishment. Just like when Jesus goes down into the desert, he suffers the temptation of the devil. And then out of that he becomes nourishment for us.
Right.
He had to go into the desert for 40 days before he began his ministry. That gave him that impetus, that oomph to do the ministry, to be able to do that.
Right. Father, in his homily this morning, talked about how the time in the desert was a time of Jesus affirming his identity, like at the baptism of John, which immediately precedes him going into the desert. God declares, "You are my beloved son." And like he said that the time in the desert is sort of a time for Jesus to meditate on what it means to be the beloved son and to spend time one-on-one alone with the Father. And it also mentions that the Holy Spirit, he's full of the Holy Spirit. So it's sort of this like Holy Trinity family time.
Holy Trinity retreat.
Holy Trinity family bonding time.
Yes.
But then Father also talked about like temptations. What's the connection between temptation and sin? He asked. And so he said, temptation is when the tempter is knocking at the back door of our hearts with all the things that we think that we want. And sin is when we open the door.
Yes.
So temptation
is not sin.
It's not sin. But then he says deliverance is when we turn away to the front door of our hearts and we let Jesus in to take care of the tempter. Like,
right.
He's the one who, but we have to let him in first.
Who displaces the temptation, just fills up the space that the temptation would fill.
But I think he made a really interesting point. He said that Jesus is tempted at the places where he is most strong.
Right.
In his identity as the Son of God. In his identity as the Word. In his power. In his glory. Those are where the devil tempts him. And he said that we too are tempted in our strengths, in our spiritual strengths. Adam is tempted through Eve, who is the great gift of God to him, and in his freedom. Like Adam's freedom is God's great gift to him, and that's where he's tempted. I thought it was really interesting. Like, he talked about like Satan doesn't hit us where we're weak, but instead where we're strong.
Right. Yeah, temptations come from our strengths, our power, our authority. That's what Father said. One of the things that struck me about this too is the devil, the way the devil talks to Jesus. He says, "If you are the Son of God," does he not know? Or does he think Jesus doesn't know? Or is he just saying, you claim to be the Son of God. Well, if you're the Son of God, then you can do. But there's this, first he starts off with, if you are the Son of God. Then he offers him kingship over everything. But Jesus is already king. Like, Jesus doesn't need the devil to give him authority and a kingship over everything, because that he already is king over everything. And then the devil dares Jesus to test the Father's promises. If he will command his angels concerning you to guard you, and with their hands they will support you, unless you dash your foot against a stone. And that's when Jesus says, do not put the Lord your God to the test. On the one hand, he's referring to the Father. Don't test, like, you're telling me to test the Father's promises, and I'm not going to do that because he tells me not to. But there's another layer to that, which is he's also in a way referring to the devil testing Jesus, because Jesus is God. Jesus is divine. Right. Don't test Jesus.
Don't test me.
And so that's where we get, when the devil had finished, he departed from him for a time. Doesn't say for a long time, but I added that. But I just thought it was interesting, like how the devil kind of almost doesn't. I've always thought that, like, why would the devil tempt Jesus with these things? Doesn't he know who he is? Jesus isn't going to fall for that. Maybe he doesn't really know who Jesus is. Maybe he doesn't really understand that God became man.
Or maybe he doesn't know that Jesus knows. Like, maybe he says, well...
Right. Maybe he's limited himself in such a way that he doesn't know.
He doesn't know who he is.
Which, is reassuring, which says the devil doesn't know everything. I mean, he's really smart, but he doesn't know everything. He doesn't have all knowledge. So I thought that was very interesting. But yeah, I mean, to go back to the thing you were saying earlier about the bread, I mean, that this is first Sunday of Lent is a lot about bread and fasting. And
isn't there something about bread and water?
Was it in the Psalm or in the second reading? No, I don't see bread and water. Oh,
I'm trying to remember. Like, I had a thought earlier and now it's gone.
Okay.
About how in Lent we so often limit ourselves in our diet and bread becomes more of a focus on the Lenten diet as we get rid of all the other foods that we're giving up. And that bread is what God promises to feed us. Like that in fasting, like a traditional fast is bread and water. And that in fasting that way, we focus mostly on the gifts that God most wants us to focus on.
Right. Well, and it's why Jesus comes to us in the Eucharist as bread and not as, vanilla ice cream or steak or brisket or something, which would be really good. But imagine going to Mass and getting brisket every week.
You might get tired of brisket.
I don't get tired of bread. But in any case, it is interesting that Jesus comes as bread for us, and that bread was probably the earliest manufactured food, the earliest food that we made from other things. Maybe soup. Although the anthropologists say that there was a time when bread was basically really thick beer, and beer was really thin bread, in this very soupy bread. That there was this fermentation in the yeast of wheat that took place, and depending on how wet it was either alcoholic and beer, or it was just bread. And so bread and wine as the I don't know, there's something interesting and fitting that what might have been our earliest foods that we made for ourselves ends up being the form of the Eucharist. I don't know. A lot to think about there. Well, in any case, it is the first Sunday of Lent, and we hope that you have had a good beginning to Lent yourself. It is a long journey, and we pray that you experience a fulfilling Lent, and that we're praying for this Lent especially. It's kind of appropriate that this Lent begins with the start of the war in Ukraine, because it is a time of penance and repentance and conversion and offering up things. And I'm offering up any of my penances and any of my disciplines this Lent for the people of Ukraine, and just
Right.
that they would be delivered from the pain. I hope they aren't fasting. You're the people of Ukraine are fasting enough this Lent, from what they're suffering. So I want them to. I want to offer up my prayers for them. Anyway, let's move on to wrap things up. I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Pamela F., Daniel S., Denise I., Joseph L., and Luis D. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue raising the bets in all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. Our show notes are at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. You can send your feedback at the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to bets, BETTS, at sqpn.com. Until next time, I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.